Right now, thousands of brand new electric vehicles are sitting untouched on dealer lots across the country. Not last year's leftovers, brand new. Some have even been parked for over a year without a single buyer walking up to them. Not every electric vehicle becomes a success, and honestly, that's something I don't think enough people talk about. We hear so much hype around new EV launches, it's easy to forget how many of them quietly fail once the cameras stop rolling. Some of these cars launched with huge expectations, big market budgets, bold promises about range, about technology, and finally giving a legacy brand its Tesla moment. Executives stood on stage and called them game changers. But today, many dealers are struggling to move these vehicles off the lot, and buyers are walking past them without a second glance. So what actually went wrong? In almost every case I looked into, it wasn't one dramatic flaw. It was a combination of things: outdated technology, a battery that couldn't keep up, unresolved software headaches, or a price tag that simply didn't match what the car delivered next to it on the same lot. And once word gets around that an EV disappoints, that reputation is brutally hard to undo, no matter how good the next update is. I'll admit, when I first started pulling numbers for this video, I expected most of these problem cars to be gas-powered leftovers, the unusual suspects everyone already jokes about. What actually surprised me is how many of them are EVs from brands with real engineering pedigree, real money behind them, and in some cases genuinely likable cars underneath all the bad press. These are the 7 electric vehicles that dealers can't seem to give away in 2026. And by the time we get through all of them, I think you'll understand exactly why so many smart buyers are choosing something else instead. Number 7. Nissan Leaf. The Nissan Leaf has a real claim to fame here, and I want to give it credit before I get into the bad news. This was one of the vehicles that helped kick off the mainstream EV movement more than a decade ago, back when electric SUV wasn't even a category buyers thought about. That head start hasn't translated into staying power. though. Nissan reworked the Leaf into a crossover shape with a bigger battery and access to a wide fast-charging network, including NACS-compatible Tesla superchargers. On paper, that sounds like real, meaningful progress, and in a vacuum, it probably would be enough. The problem is timing, and honestly, this is the part that gets me. By the time this newer Leaf reached showrooms, buyers already had years of hands-on experience with faster charging, longer-range competitors from Hyundai, Kia, and Chevrolet. The Leaf spent so long defending the outdated first version reputation that even a genuinely improved version still struggles to shake off the old EV label people attached it to years ago. Buyers now have far more better alternatives sitting around next to it on the same lot, and old baggage is incredibly hard to shed once it sticks. It's one of the more frustrating stories on this list for me personally, because the Leaf genuinely deserves some respect for what it started, even if the market has completely moved past it. Number 6. Mazda MX-30. The Mazda MX-30 is one of those cars that makes me a little sad, if I'm being honest, because it's proof that good looks alone don't sell cars. The smart electric crossover has a genuinely distinctive design. It's got rear-hinged freestyle doors, a clean and thoughtfully designed interior, and styling that stands out in a sea of look-alike SUVs that all seem to blur together after a while. Reviewers praise the way it feels different from anything else in its class, and I get why. It photographs beautifully. But underneath that design is a battery pack that simply can't compete in 2026. Real-world range sits around 100 to 150 miles depending on conditions, and those numbers were mediocre back when the car launched. Now they're well behind the pack. Mazda has already discontinued the model in multiple markets, which only reinforces the sense that this was a short-lived design experiment rather than a serious long-term product. Style alone just wasn't enough to make up for a battery that couldn't keep up with where the segment moved. Number 5. Subaru Solterra. The Solterra landed in one of the hottest, most crowded segments in the entire market. Compact electric SUVs, all-wheel drive. If any car on this list should have an easy path to success, it's probably this one. Subaru gave it real strengths to work with: standard symmetrical all-wheel drive, solid ground clearance, and a redesigned version with faster charging and a range pushing toward 288 miles. For longtime Subaru loyalists, this checks a lot of boxes they actually care about. But here's the thing I keep coming back to: competitive isn't the same as compelling. Buyers cross-shopping this segment can get a Tesla Model Y with a massively larger charging network, a Honda Ioniq 5 with quicker charging speeds, or a Kia EV6 with sharper styling, often for similar money. The Solterra does everything reasonably well, but it doesn't clearly win on range, price, or charging speed against any single one of them. It struggled to stand out in class where simply being good enough doesn't cut it anymore. And I think that's the hardest kind of failure to fix, because there's no single obvious thing to point to. Number 4. Mercedes-Benz EQC. Luxury was never the issue with the EQC, and I want to be clear about that up front. Mercedes built exactly what you'd expect from the brand: a quiet cabin, high-quality materials, and the kind of refined ride the three-pointed star has always been known for. Buyers didn't reject this car because it felt cheap or poorly made. They rejected it because the rest of the EV world simply moved faster than Mercedes did. Efficiency, charging speed, and usable range all improved dramatically across the segment, while the EQC's underlying platform stayed largely frozen in place. A luxury buyer spending EQC money today can get a Genesis, a BMW, or a Tesla that charges faster and drives farther without sacrificing any of the comfort they came for. Buyers simply moved on to newer platforms that solve the exact same problems, only better. And there wasn't much reason left to stick around. It's a reminder that in this industry, standing still for even a couple of years can quietly turn a flagship into an afterthought. Number 3. Lexus RZ. The Lexus RZ delivers exactly what you'd expect from the brand on comfort and build quality: a hushed cabin, tight panel gaps, and the kind of fit and finish that luxury buyers pay a premium for in the first place. Where it turns into real trouble is expectations. And this is where I think Lexus underestimated its own customer base. This is a premium-priced electric SUV, and premium buyers expect segment-leading range and performance to come along with that badge on the hood. Instead, the RZ's manufacturer estimated range tops out somewhere around 300 miles on the base trim, and it drops into the 260s once you add all-wheel drive, which are solid numbers, but not exactly class-leading, especially once you're spending Lexus-level money for the privilege. When a luxury SUV doesn't clearly outperform mainstream competitors, shoppers start asking themselves what exactly they're paying that premium for. Expectations were simply higher than what the car actually delivered once people got behind the wheel and ran the numbers themselves. Number 2. Jaguar I-PACE. There was a time when the I-PACE was genuinely one of the most exciting electric vehicles you could buy. A proper luxury EV with real performance from a brand that had actually earned some credibility in this space early on. That excitement has faded, and honestly, it's a little painful to watch. Software glitches and recalls chipped away at buyer confidence over the years, and Jaguar's own strategy hasn't helped matters. The brand has publicly committed to reinventing itself as an ultra-luxury, electric-only label going forward, which leaves current-generation vehicles like the I-PACE feeling like a product with an expiration date stamped on it. Add a shrinking dealer network into the mix, and buyers start worrying about long-term service and support before they've even taken it for a test drive. Meanwhile, rivals like Porsche, BMW, and Genesis have all released newer EVs with better range, faster charging, and none of that uncertainty hanging over the ownership experience. Time hasn't been kind to the I-PACE, and rapid advances from competitors made the gap between it and everything else a little wider every single year. Number 1. VinFast VF8. The VF8 arrived with enormous ambition, and I think that's actually worth respecting for a moment before we get into why it's here at number 1. A Vietnamese newcomer backed by serious capital, promising to leapfrog established automakers with a stylish Pininfarina-designed electric SUV, a big touchscreen interior, and an EPA-estimated range in the mid-200-mile range. Ambition wasn't the problem. Execution was. Early reviews flagged inconsistent software, rough refinement details, and an ownership experience that didn't match what buyers expect at this price point, even with the appeal of a long warranty and aggressive introductory financing thrown in to sweeten the deal. For a brand with zero track record in the US market, first impressions carry an enormous amount of weight, and the early ones just weren't kind. Once a new brand gets labeled unfinished, it has to fight uphill for every single sale afterward, no matter how much the product actually improves behind the scenes. First impressions really do matter, and in today's brutally competitive EV market, they're incredibly difficult to overcome once they've set in. I actually think VinFast could turn this around given enough time. But time is exactly the thing dealers sitting on unsold inventory don't have right now. So here's some closing thoughts. What ties all 7 of these together isn't bad engineering or bad intentions. Every one of these automakers genuinely set out to build something competitive, and in isolation, most of these cars aren't terrible. I want to be fair about that. What actually sinks an EV in 2026 is timing and momentum. The market moves so fast right now that a genuinely solid vehicle from 3 years ago can look outdated today, and a rocky launch can follow a car around for its entire lifecycle, no matter how many software updates and facelifts come afterward to fix it. The buyers who are winning right now aren't necessarily choosing the flashiest EV on the showroom floor. They're choosing the one with the fewest question marks attached to it, the shortest range, the fastest charging, and a brand they genuinely trust to be still standing behind the car in 5 years. If there's one thing I'd tell a friend shopping for an EV in 2026, it's this. Don't fall for the launch day hype, and don't assume a familiar badge automatically means a safe bet. Some of the most respected names in the industry are sitting on the exact same unsold lots as the newcomers nobody heard of. The car that actually deserves your money is the one that's still solving your problems a year after you drive it off the lot, not the one that solved the marketing team's problems on launch day. So here's the question I keep asking myself after putting this list together. Is this a rough patch for an industry still figuring itself out, or is EV buying becoming as unforgiving as the smartphone market, where falling one generation behind means falling out of the conversation entirely? Drop your take in the comments, and if you want to see which EVs are actually winning buyers over in 2026, subscribe, because that video is coming next.